What's this? It all began in the year 1988, where Kiryu Kazuma beat up this guy in an empty lot, but he died, except Kiryu didn't kill him. So he goes to his boss of the Dojima family to clear his name, but they're like, lol, what? You killed him. Heard a dirt. And so he decides to leave the Tojo clan, which he's a part of, and clear his name. But they're like, nuh-uh. And he's like, yeah-huh. So now he's in the rain, and some guy shows up with his robot arm. His name is Tachibana, and he helps him out. What a nice guy. Can't wait to see what he does in the next game. Anyway, Kiryu joins up with him. Now we get to learn the perspective of Goro Majima. He's in a town called Sotenbori. He runs a cabaret club called Grand. He's tasked with killing someone in order to join back with the Tojo clan, but he can't do it because he's too strong. Except he's not the actual guy he needs to kill, it's her. What? Anyway, fast forward, she owns this empty lot and and the Tojo clan wants it, but they better not because they'll do something bad because they're criminals, heard of her. So eventually she sells it to this guy who does something with it, probably, and he joins with the Tojo clan anyway. Oh well. They both beat up a bunch of people. Let's move on to 1995, where Kiryu is now one of the top guys of the Dojima family. Except Nishiki kills his boss, but Kiryu takes his place and goes to jail for 10 years in exchange for his brother being out of jail. Meanwhile, in the year 2000, a man by the name of Ichiban, basically the exact same thing happens to him. Do you know why I call you Ichi? Because it's my name but shortened, sir? No. Ichibo. Skip ahead to 2005, where Kiryu gets out of jail. He's trying to figure out what the heck he's supposed to do. Majima beats him up a bunch of times because they're best buds. And eventually, he finds a girl by the name of Haruka. They're both trying to find her mom or aunt or something. The point is, there's a lot of money. Someone has it. They need to figure out who has it. Turns out she has it. She's his lover or something. And then it explodes. His brother dies. Oh yeah, by the way, his brother was bad the whole time throughout the game, but they're okay because it was a rubber explosion. That'll make sense later. Okay, and then 1 year later, the graphics got bumped up a whole bunch, and then now he needs to find a successor to the Tojo clan because he is the Tojo clan guy, but not anymore because he's the Tojo clan guy, but not anymore because he died. Anyway, he tasked his former boss's son with doing it, but he's like, no, and Kiryu's like, yes, and he's like, no, and then they beat each other up. Skip ahead a bunch, he eventually does it. Kiryu meets a lady by the name of Sayama, who's a cop, which is like, oh no, a Yakuza being in love with a cop? Where has this ever been done before? I don't know. There's a whole conspiracy thing. There's this guy named Ryuji Goda who's trying to take over the Tojo clan's rival by the name of the Omi Alliance. But Kiryu doesn't want him to because, yeah, that'd be bad or something. I don't really know. And by the end of it, this guy gets revived and it turns out he was a Korean guy. That's a whole thing I don't want to talk about. Don't remember much. Anyway, Kiryu gets beaten up and explodes, except, bomb was fake. Anyway, in 2009, the graphics got knocked down a bunch. What happened to her face? He runs an orphanage now where Haruka and a bunch of other kids are there. He learns to cook some curry or something. And yeah, they're like, hey, we need this place. And Kiryu's like, no. It all ends with him beating up this guy by the name of Mine. It's a whole big conspiracy thing. I don't remember much of it, mainly because the game was kind of raw in my brain because the combat. Anyway, in Yakuza 4, there's 4 playable characters now. The first one you play as is Akiyama, who's probably the best ever. He's a really rich guy. He gives out loans for free. You don't have interest. You don't have to do anything. This lady shows up and is like, hey, give me like all your money for free. Why? I don't know. So eventually he does it, and then we play as Saejima, who's in prison, except he's not anymore. He meets Kiryu Kazuma. They fight for a while. Haruka tells him to stop. Then eventually he shows up at Kamurocho. There's this guy named Tanimura. He's a corrupt cop. I don't remember much about him. And then Kiryu eventually shows up. There's this whole big conspiracy thing again with like cops and corruptness and stuff. This guy's a corrupt cop. This guy's a Yakuza, except he's a cop, except he's a Yakuza, something. I don't know. This guy teamed up with this guy. It's a bit confusing. Just let's move on. Kiryu left his kids in exchange for becoming a taxi driver, which is like anyone's dream. I mean, for real. Wouldn't you want to become a taxi driver? Just abandon your kids to become a taxi driver? He's reeled back into the Yakuza because, of course he is, because this game needs to have a plot. Saejima is back in prison for some reason, probably because he broke out the first time, except now he's escaped and now he's hunting a bunch of stuff. Oh, I hate this part so much. Just move on. Haruka's a dancer now. Akiyama's in Sotenbori along with Haruka for some reason. And there's this new guy by the name of Shinada. He's funny. He was a baseball player, but he's not anymore. I don't remember much about this guy. And eventually, everyone meets in Kamurocho for some big, bad brawl. Akiyama fights Frankenstein and gains the respect of all the Yakuzas of the area. Saejima... Did he fight Majima? Finally, in the finale? Oh yeah, Majima's been dead this whole time, except not really. Forgot to mention that, mainly because it probably wasn't that important. Anyway, Shinada, who's he fight again? Clearly that wasn't important. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about this guy. He's a detective, except he's actually the chairman of the Omi Alliance or something like that. And, yeah, it's a whole big conspiracy thing. I don't remember most of it, mainly because it doesn't really matter. And then finally, Kiryu fights Aizawa, who is the most, what are you doing here? I don't know. Boss fight ever. Like, they just fight for no reason, mainly because this guy wants to be there, but he can't. So that happened. And then 2016, he gets out of jail. He went to jail for some reason. I don't remember what it was. No, I actually don't remember at all. He gets back to the orphanage, but Haruka's not there. She got into a car accident. So eventually he gets to find his grandson. He has to find his grandson by the name of Haruto, who's Haruka's son. He's trying to find his dad, leads him to Onomichi for some reason. Eventually he meets up with a bunch of guys. You got Nagamo, Yuta, Babyface, Frankenstein 2.0, and Takeshi, who made that one stupid NES game. He eventually becomes all buddy-buddy with him. Turns out this guy's the father. He's the son of some Korean guy. By the end of it, there's a whole big conspiracy about a really big boat for some reason. There's this big secret of Onomichi, and it turns out it's just a really big boat. Apparently, it makes sense if you're from Japan, but I don't really get it because I'm not. So it's just kind of lame. Anyway, by the end, he gets shot and dies, except he doesn't really die. He gives up his life in exchange for protecting the ones he loves. Put that in quotation marks. So yeah, everyone thinks he's dead, except not really, because of course they don't. Skip ahead 3 years. Kiryu is an agent for the Daidoji faction. This game just released, by the way. You should go play it. You should play all of these. Play all of them. He becomes a member of the Daidoji faction. They're like, hey, we all know that you're alive, by the way, which is like plot breaking because, you know, that's really dumb. Anyway, eventually he gets to help the Omi Alliance. Well, he's forced to help the Omi Alliance. He has to beat up this guy because he wants the Omi Alliance to not be dissolved, except it actually is now. We're going back to 2019, which is the same year all this stuff happens, but we're going a little bit further back. This guy is Ichiban Kasuga. He just got out of prison from the crime I mentioned earlier. Do you remember that? Do you remember when I talked about that? It doesn't matter. He's trying to figure out what the heck is going on with his life. He meets up with his boss who shoots him. That's fun. He ends up in Yokohama for some reason. And eventually, blah, blah, blah. A bunch of stuff happens. He helps his dad defeat the Tojo and Omi Alliance. This guy kills his dad, except it's not really his dad. Oh yeah, this guy actually has a son. That's not him, except it kind of is him. It's complicated. Basically, he was in a wheelchair for a while, and now he's not. Now he's running for governor of Tokyo or something. But turns out he's a bad guy, so he can't let him do that. And then by the end, he gets stabbed. And this guy who killed this guy's dad, except not really dad, except also actually his dad, he gets beat up. And then by the end, everyone's happy except the guys that are dead. And that's the entire story leading up to Infinite Wealth. If you have any questions, I don't care. Go play the games yourself.